Welcome to the Harvest Report for the 7th of November 2014. With a clear warm week, harvest has progressed across the state. Most sites are now open and receiving grain. With some showers forecast over the coming week, we may see a return to stop-start harvesting. 3,288,656 tonnes have now been received. The best receival day this week was 330,000 tonnes. The CBH Grain Operations Manager, Brett Jeffrey, says growers are now moving into their cereal crops. Growers in the Geraldton Zone and the Northern Kwinana Zone have confirmed that yields have not been meeting their expectations. CBH is hoping that is not consistent through the Southern Kwinana Zone and the Albany Zone for growers in those areas where more consistent rainfall events have occurred during the year. To the totals, and the total received to date for the Geraldton Zone is 975,285 tonnes. The total received to date for Esperance Zone is 525,412 tonnes. The total received to date for Kwinana Zone is 1,559,281 tonnes, and the total received to date for Albany Zone is 228,678 tonnes. Now to the Geraldton Zone, where receivals have been steady this week. While the zone is not breaking any receival records, the harvest is just over halfway. For many growers, yields to date have been less than expected. The zone total may be revised down in the coming weeks as more yield information becomes available. Geraldton Zone Manager Duncan Gray says on a positive note there is some good quality wheat being received. He says there is some high quality wheat coming through in the milling grades and that growers have finished harvesting canola but are still waiting for lupins to ripen. To the Kwinana Zone, and the Kwinana Zone is now receiving barley, canola, wheat, oats and lupins. The quality is generally good across all commodities, but yields are down slightly on predictions, meaning the zone estimate may be revised down in the coming weeks. Assistant Kwinana Zone Manager Alan Walker says the harvesting weather has been good this week. He says CBH has had a fair amount of grain coming in, so most of the sites are open, with the last few to open next week. To the Albany Zone, and harvest in the Albany Zone started to ramp up this week, with the majority of grain harvested canola and barley. The quality and oil content of the canola harvested is remaining high for most growers. There have been some quality issues with barley, mainly due to low protein, with around 60% of the barley received graded as feed. As a result, a number of Malt 2 segregations have been introduced across various sites. The quality of wheat so far has been good, although protein has ranged from 8 through to 13.5%. CBH Albany Zone Manager Greg Thornton says that due to last week's port closures, there is still 200,000 tonnes of carryover at the terminal. He says the terminal stock is planned to start shipping next week. There was some isolated rain received late in the week, which has slowed the harvest progress, but hopefully with a return to finer weather next week, we will see harvest in full force again. To the Esperance Zone, and in the Esperance Zone, receivals have ramped up this week with a good run of weather across most of the zone. Growers have now started harvesting predominantly cereals. This activity has increased tonnages significantly across the zone. More than half of the total received so far has been in the last week. Esperance Zone Manager Mick Dawes says the quality of grains remains good, which is helping to keep receivals at a good pace. He says that if the weather remains favourable, we'll be around halfway through the crop by this time next week. Now to the market update supplied by General Manager of Marketing and Trading Jason Craig. Australian local grain prices this week have been buffeted from the declining Australian dollar, which did see some growers selling as they continued to harvest. In Western Australia this past week, malt, barley and canola prices hit key pricing levels, which attracted some growers selling. Domestic wheat prices in Western Australia continue to be driven by protein differentials as well as exporters' shipping slot commitments. This past week, exporters were again prepared to pay above traditional port spreads in Geraldton and Kwinana zones to secure protein in these respective port zones to fulfil their shipping slot commitments.